Hi everyone, welcome to Mindset Adventure. I'm Tini and I'm here with Micaeh Tice, who is a wellness coach for leaders and high achievers. Micaeh, thank you for joining us on the show. Please tell us how you got started and why wellness and why leaders.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me and inviting me to be here. I really appreciate it. So I actually got started in wellness coaching. I was a personal trainer just out of college, and so have always had a passion for health and wellness and just trying to prevent, health concerns and diseases and things like that before they happen. And so I went from personal training and then moved into wellness coaching, was invited into that with the company I was working for at the time. So they actually put us in companies and organizations that we partnered with to work with their worksite wellness programs. So the company would pay for a coach to come in and help their employees live healthy, with the idea of saving on health insurance and having their employees be healthier and happier and all of that. So that's kind of how I got led into the type of people I work with now. So now I'm a wellness coach on my own and working with high performing leaders, high achieving leaders, because when I worked with them in the organizations, I saw it affect so many people within their company. So if they were stressed out, their team was stressed out. If they were burned out, the whole team suffered as far as just not being able to keep up with what they wanted to. And wellness is so crucial to that, just to be able to take care of yourself, have enough energy to meet all the daily demands that you have. And so that's where my wellness coaching kind of fits in with that group of just making sure that you're taking care of you so you can take care of everything else. So that's kind of how I got into it in a very short way to explain, if it made sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And you just had this opportunity to work with leaders and high achievers, so you understand them and you understand their needs. What is the recurrent problem that you see when working?
Do you say the biggest problem?
Yeah, a recurring problem, something that you see kind of all the time.
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest one would just be getting so caught up in doing everything that they need to do, which typically is taking care of everyone else but themselves. And they want to be a good leader. They want to take care of their people. They want to meet deadlines. They want to maybe impress their boss, whoever that may be. Like there's a lot of different, reasons why they may do that. But they just tend to go and not really take time to think about what's important to them and how to be intentional with what's really important. And so even their employees may be important to them or their team, but they get stuck in like tunnel vision and forget to kind of take a step back and look at the whole picture sometimes because they get so focused. So I'd say that's probably one of the biggest struggles that I've seen them have.
Okay, so you show them how to take a break and how to arrange things in a different order and to prioritize.
Yeah, how to prioritize, how to be intentional with their time, how to again kind of look at that big picture of, yes, I want to meet this goal, but if I let everything else crumble or slide in the background, what's that goal really going to be worth to me? Is it going to be worth it in the end? So kind of helping them have that different perspective and different outlook. And then also like just implementing the daily habits and routines that they need to be able to, show up as their best self, so to speak. So, for example, if you got a lot on your plate and your health suffers, everything else tends to crumble. So those habits are really important to get back to, just to be able to kind of have that foundation. If you're sleeping well, you're eating well, like you're going to have more energy to be able to do all those things. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more, because something that I've always thought about is, why don't we make health and wellness part of our business skills? So a requirement to have a business and to own your business, because without being healthy and taking care of ourselves, without having that energy, we won't be able to tend to our business. That's how I see it. Okay. Do you see people struggling with finding balance in their life? And how does that manifest in their life? What do they tell you?
Yeah, I see them struggle with it a lot. Typically, what I hear is them having this idea that balance is unreachable, that, oh, there's, about, I don't know if you've heard people say like balance is crab, you can never have a balanced lifestyle. And I think that in some ways, I think they have a point. Like, you're not going to be able to put 100% into 10 different areas, but you can have some balance when you're making sure that you're intentional about not letting things completely fall by the wayside, but giving it just enough attention so that, all of the things that you care about and that you value are still, it's more like a blend. Like, I feel like people could use the word blend versus balance of like, how are we going to blend this all and make sure that we're keeping our priorities, in the right place. And so that's what I hear is like, oh, balance is not reachable. It's not attainable. Like, why should I even try? Because it's not going to ever look perfect, which is true. But I think we just need to kind of look at it as more kind of in a different light, so to speak.
Yeah, because when you think about finding balance, it's like you're finding something and you're done looking for something else and it never changes. So you find something that looks perfect and you're set. But I think that it's a matter of language, of looking at language. We can use finding balance, but also understanding that we can also need to adapt to certain situations and our priorities are going to change. So the balance is going to change, but we will always know how to maintain the balance, so to speak.
Yeah, that word adapt is a really good way to put it, because it's learning to, be okay with kind of just the ebb and flow of life and adapting to any little thing that comes along your way. Like, life happens and life is continually changing. So if we can learn to be resilient and adapt to that versus like, oh, there goes my routine. Oh, there goes my balance, then you're going to feel more balanced if you're willing to kind of flow along with that and get rid of that perfectionist mindset of like, everything has to be this way. The language, like you said, the language is really important there. So
yeah, sometimes we just get hung up on using specific words and we forget that we have the ability to look beyond the words and say, hey, I can interpret this. It doesn't necessarily have to be black and white.
Yeah. And you also mentioned, or you asked, like, how does that manifest in their lives? And really, it is kind of two parts to that. It really is like that perfectionist mindset of like, it's never going to look the way I want it, so why try? And so then they end up not really striving for growth, or, they kind of just tend to get stuck or plateau because they don't really see hope in that. And that's when that perfectionism sets in of like, there's just no point, and then the other thing is, just things that are important to them kind of falling by the wayside because they're not intentional. They don't feel like it's possible to maintain that balance. And so they kind of are just not intentional about even trying. And so, but if you take time to think about what you value and give that a little bit of attention, and going back and making sure that you're paying attention to those things, then you're going to be a lot much better off. So, just the things that are important to you, it's important to keep those in mind and be intentional about them. But then letting things fall off that maybe don't matter as much is important too.
Do you think that everyone knows what's important to them, or do you also work on that with them?
I do work on that with them. I think that sometimes it's easy to get caught up in just the day-to-day, and you kind of do forget about what's important to you. I did a challenge recently with Dean Graziosi, and one of the questions, I actually have it on my computer, so I'm like looking at it right now. But he was like, what 5 things would you do if you had 1 week to live? And, it's kind of a silly question maybe, but one of the things I wrote on there was like, I would call my family. Like, I would call my grandma, I would talk to my mom. And it doesn't mean you have to call every family member, every day, like you're literally going to die tomorrow. But at the same time, like, I hadn't talked to my grandma in maybe 3-4 years recently. And I called her, gosh, it was a couple months ago. I was like, I'm going to call her and see how she's doing. And she ended up like being sick that day. I got to talk to her for 2 minutes. She ended up being in the hospital. She's fine now. But I was like, it was that moment of like, oh, like, what if something did happen and I hadn't called her, So I kind of forgot where I was going. I got rabbit trailed on that, but just knowing what's important to you. I think a lot of us know, but we just forget to be mindful about it when we get caught up in the day-to-day stuff,
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and it helps us distance ourselves from the day to day, as you said, because sometimes we feel that we are doing the same things over and over again, and we believe that if we do something out of the ordinary, then everything is going to be thrown away, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
going to bring more imbalance or disbalance. Well,
Yeah. Yeah. And some people tend to be, some people are surprised when we look at like their values, because sometimes they think, oh yeah, well, I value this, this, and this. And they think that they're spending time on those things. But then when they really dig into it and do a deeper assessment, then they realize, oh, I'm not doing this that I thought I did, or I'm really not, I'm saying I prioritize this piece of my life, but I'm not actually prioritizing it, you know?
okay, so it kind of feels like an illusion of sorts.
Yeah, sometimes. Or just saying it because other people say it. Like, most people will say, oh yeah, well, I value, God, family, uh, work, faith, whatever that may be. And then, but they're like not really living that out. So it's a good like aha moment for people to really dive in deep. And so, I mean, for those watching, I would just encourage you like to do a deep dive assessment into like, what do you really value? And then like, how much time are you spending on those things? And are you really giving it the attention that it needs to not completely fall off, So.
But why do you think that we sometimes distance ourselves from what is really important to us? Is it the way
Um,
we're being taught? Is it the fear of being judged or not being safe?
I would say both of those maybe. Like, sometimes we tend to listen to outside influence of like what we should be doing or what we should care about. One of the things that I will coach people on a lot of times on wellness is what do you care about and what's going to help you feel better for your goals. So a lot of them will start setting goals because they feel like they should, or because they feel like it's the right thing to do and it's what society says I should do. But it's like, no, like what do you really care about and what are your goals? And so we get caught up in thinking maybe comparison, maybe feeling judged if we're not doing things the same way someone else would. And then I think when we realize that, we kind of realize, oh, that's kind of funny that we're doing that. I think we do it without realizing it sometimes. So
Do you think that there is a connection between what we think and the actions that we do and the way we feel in our body? Because I was reading a book by Eric John Campbell. He's just someone who used to teach copywriting, and he wrote this wonderful book. And he said that we should always do the things that feel lightest in our body. So whenever we feel tension, it means that we're not doing the things that are important to us. So do you notice that sense of lightness when they really focus on what is important to them?
Yeah, I would say definitely like stress levels go down. And I know this just even from personal experience too with me. But just the stress level goes down. It doesn't mean you're not stressed at all and everything's perfect. But there's just a sense of like true fulfillment. And yeah, I don't know if I've had anyone else kind of explain it that way, like feeling lighter. But you can just tell in people's voice and the way they talk about their day and how they show up that they're lighter because, they're not worried about all these other things that they don't really care about. So I'll have to check that book out though. It sounds good.
Yeah, I'm going to leave a link up for that because we've mentioned it and maybe someone else is going to be interested in reading. It's a light read. Yeah, but it just made me think about that. And it's something that as entrepreneurs, I think it's super important. It's like a superpower that we can have. I'm going to do this, and if it doesn't feel right, then I might not do it. Maybe I don't need it. Maybe I don't need to do it. But going back to stress, is there a specific technique that you use or something that what is the framework? What would you say, or what would you start to work on for someone who feels stressed?
That's kind of it's fine. It's a good question. It's a loaded question. So I'm like trying to think of what would be the best way to respond. Lots of different things we look at. So we look at what's, trying to find the triggers of your stress. Is it actually having a too full plate and doing too much? Or is it more the mindset of, you know, trying to keep it all under control, trying to make it look, you know, a certain way? You know, and then just on the health and wellness side, you know, what are you doing to relieve that stress? Are you moving your body to release that tension? Are you eating the foods that are going to be good for your body versus causing additional inflammation and stress? So, you know, I love coffee and I drink coffee, but if I drink 4, I'm going to feel super, like 4 cups, you know, I'm going to feel super anxious and jittery. I'm going to feel more stress, you know. So what are you doing to your body in that way too? So physically, just looking at all of those areas, physical, mental, emotional, you know, I'll try to figure out like what's going on with that individual, and then, you know, try to pinpoint what might be causing that and then how we can reduce that. So again, it's pretty individualized, but those would be the things that we look at first.
That's exactly what I was looking for, because I wanted to see if you also tackled the nutritional aspect and the exercise and everything. So it's a all-in-one approach.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just basically analyzing what's going on and identifying the cause, and then working on that specifically, because someone might be okay with their nutrition, but they might need to work on their mindset or their work or prioritization. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that inspires you in your work, that inspired you? Do you have a mentor, someone that you follow?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I have a lot of mentors. Some I know personally, and most of them I don't actually, but you know, just people out there in the field. Honestly, Brendan Burchard is probably one of my favorites to just follow and learn from. And I think because he works with the same people that I tend to work with. So the high performer, the high achiever. And then I don't know if you've read his book, if you're familiar with High Performance Habits or not.
No.
But his chapter 2 is all on energy, and it's all about how we can, you know, generate our own energy through physical activity, through, you know, like checking our mindset, having positive thoughts, all of these things. So it's like the health and wellness piece of high performance, because if that fails, you know, again, we're going to struggle in some of these other areas. So I think I tend to like kind of cling to a lot of what he says, or I'm inspired just by how he approaches life, of like, we really have the power to choose, you know, what we want our life to look like, what we put our energy into. So when it comes to balance, you know, if we really have a choice to make, if we want to live that more balanced lifestyle, or if we want to, you know, learn to adapt to that flow, we can choose to do that or not, just believing that it's possible and then taking steps to do that. So he's one of my favorites, but I have a lot of others that I like too. It's probably a list of like 100. So
that's actually good, because you see things differently from all sorts of perspectives, so nothing can surprise you. You said something nice that I really thought it was nice. So we can adapt to the flow of things, but do you notice that the flow has to changes and we don't adapt, or do we adapt and the flow stays the same?
I think that we adapt, like, as life, well, I don't know, because it could be our doing, like our choice of adding something to our plate, or, you know, a life change that we are choosing to make this change. And then we have to learn to adapt to that. So I think it's maybe both ways, because also stuff happens that's outside of our control. And so we have to learn to adapt to that too. So it is kind of coming from both ways on that, you know.
What's one tip? Yeah, I agree completely. I also think that it's a matter of perspective of how you look at things. Is there a tip that you would give our viewers, listeners, on how to reach balance and how to lead a balanced life?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I kind of already said it before about just being intentional about, you know, knowing your values, knowing what you care about, what's important to you, and then just making sure that you are keeping those actually your priorities, you know, and not letting the other stuff slip in and make it yourself busy all the time. But I already talked about that. So the last thing I would say is just maybe learn to compartmentalize things. And so, you know, when you're at work, like be at work, be focused on the person you're serving, the project you're working on, what you're doing there. And then, you know, when you leave work, and you may be working from home, so it may have to be, it's going to look a little different for some of you. But when you leave work, like leave work there and then go be intentional about like your family time, or go be intentional about your exercise time, instead of thinking about all these things that you don't have control over or that you don't have time to deal with right now. And that just takes work. Like it takes time to really shut off, you know, what's maybe going on. I mean, in the shower, like I'm constantly thinking about work in the shower because that's where all my good ideas come, you know, or if I'm on a run, I get good ideas. So it's okay to think about, you know, creative things like that, but to be stressing over a problem that I can't solve when I'm, you know, out for a run or in the shower, like I'm just wasting my energy in that. So learning how to compartmentalize of like, this is what I'm focused on, this is what I'm doing now, can really be helpful with that balanced feeling, because you're not feeling like you're thinking about all the things all the time. So again, it takes practice, but it really is doable. So I would just encourage you to kind of start maybe small with that. That if I had to do one tip, that would be it, probably, to just compartmentalize those different areas of life. So
it's a wonderful tip. Do you think that there's an easier way of practicing this?
I don't know if there's it depends on the person, so it's hard to say in general. But some things that you can do are like little triggers to help yourself do that. So, you know, if you're shutting down your work day and you're going to go spend time with family, have some of kind of a routine that you follow, like I call it the workday shutdown. So maybe it's like, you know, responding to emails I haven't responded to, or maybe it's, you know, cleaning off my desk and putting away papers and kind of like putting a close to it. And that can kind of trigger your brain into like, okay, this is done. I'm going to go do this now. So it's like a physical act that triggers you into that. And you can do the same thing when you're coming home from work. If you pull in the garage, take a minute to like close your eyes and then imagine how you want to show up in that next moment when you walk through the door and see your family. You can kind of like just being mindful. So those two things are the first things I thought of that you can maybe kind of do that are more tangible, I guess, to do that. So
yeah, I love them. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Is there a place where people can connect with you if they want to connect with you, learn more, work with you, follow you?
Yeah. So I'm on Facebook and Instagram mostly. So on Facebook, I'm at Eagle Fire Wellness. So that's our company name. It's Eagle Fire Enrichment, but it's the wellness division. So you can find me there, or on Instagram, it's Micaeh, MICAEH _Eagle Fire Wellness. So it's kind of long. I don't know if that, you know, it's
we'll
easy
post
to
the
find.
links, so it's gonna be easy.
Yeah, you can post it. But yeah, either of those, I usually post similar stuff there, but a little different, just because the audience is different on Instagram versus Facebook sometimes. But yeah, or just feel free to DM me if you have any questions, or if something word am I trying to say? Stuck out to you of like, oh, I want to implement this, but I have a question. Like, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I would be definitely open to that. So
yeah, thank you for the invitation. For the for the viewers. One more thing. Is there one more thing that you'd like to share with whomever is watching or listening?
Yeah. I would say the last thing I would like leave you with maybe is going back to kind of that perfectionist mindset. I think sometimes, especially entrepreneurs, like I feel like we're people of excellence. Like we like things to be well done, and we want our work to be excellent and good. You know, but that perfectionism can creep in of like, oh, it's just not right, or you know, it's just not how I want it to be. But you know, when it comes to balance and being perfect, like that's just not going to happen. And so learning to be okay with things not being like perfect, but they can still be excellent. And that's kind of how your life might look like. You know, you're going to go through times where you're going to struggle. You're going to feel out of balance, but being okay with that and just learning to show up excellent in the next moment and the next moment and take it one step at a time, versus like trying to do everything at once, because that can be really overwhelming. So that would be my last tip, I guess.
So beautiful, so beautiful. And I resonate with that completely. Sometimes I really want things to be perfect, but we just have to go with the flow, right?
Yes, go with the flow. It's a good phrase.
Yeah. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation and for being on the show. And
Thank you.
it was fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And we'll see you around. Until next time, sending you all a big hug and have fun.